I'm going to tell you about a ghost that I'm pretty sure is haunting me. Her name is Nellie Ellen. I've never actually seen Nellie Ellen, but I can really feel her presence. It started when I was about 5 years old. I had one of my friends over, and we were sleeping in a tent under the skylights. My friend woke up at about 2 a.m. in the morning and said she wanted to go home. She was sweating profusely and was very pale. I got scared, and I asked what was the matter. She didn't want to tell me, but I finally dragged it out of her. She said that she'd seen an old lady looking at us through the top of the tent, through the skylights, and she was bloody, holding a broken teacup. We ran to my mom and slept in her bedroom that night. I never saw her though, but my friend really scared me. Over the next 5 years, only small stuff happened. Footsteps down the hall, knocking, etc. When I was 10, I had one of my very good friends over. She woke me up around 2, like my other friend had, and she was crying. The room was so dark, so I turned on the lights. My friend had a bloody nose and was crying really hard now. I asked what happened, and she insisted that she got them all the time, and we called her mother. Her mother came, and we were talking about how my friend was really upset. I said that she told me that she got nosebleeds all the time. Her mother said that it was odd that she lied, because she never gets nosebleeds. When I went to school, I asked her what really happened, and she said, Nellie Ellen, and we've never been friends since. Years later, odd things began to happen again. I was up late, watching TV, and I heard knocking coming from my window. Nothing was there though, that I could see anyway. The next day, I did some research on my house. I found out that there used to be a woman named Nellie Ellen who owned a Teashop in the bottom of the house. I asked a neighbor about her. My neighbor said that she used to be friends with Nellie Ellen until she went crazy. I was informed that Nellie Ellen would sit on the roof in the late hours of the night with her teacups and talk to herself. One night though, Nellie Ellen accidentally locked herself out of her house and was stuck on the roof in the blistering cold. She tried to get in, but she couldn't, so she had to break a window to get in. But some of the window hit her, and she was so weak from breaking the window in the cold, she was left to die on the roof with the thing she loved the most, her teacups. A few weeks had gone by, and nothing had happened. But one day, my dogs got up and started barking at nothing. They are very protective. They usually can't get up the stairs, but somehow managed to and started barking at the roof. I was sure it was Nellie Ellen. I asked her what she wanted, and the dogs stopped barking. They just stared at the window in the attic. She didn't say anything, so I told her to leave me alone and never come back. I think my wish was granted though, because I didn't see her again. The Yellow House on Elm Street in Kansas was home to a restless spirit that had died from illness in the bedroom upstairs. I, as a young girl in high school, chose this room as my own. It was soon after moving in that I heard scuffling noises as if he was walking around, wondering what I was doing there. One night, in fact, I awoke to find him lying next to me. It was like millions of gray dots forming a human shape. At the time, I thought it was my imagination and blew it off. Then he became more active. I could hear a slamming of the back door and someone running up the steps, and then you could not hear anything else after a big stomp at the top of the stairs. One night in particular, I heard a stomp outside my bedroom and then a scuffling of someone walking slowly. It came to the right side of my bed and stopped, then to the left side and stopped. Then it went to the end of my bed and stopped. At the same time, my heavy curtain flew out over my bed, straight as an arrow. Needless to say, I was scared out of my wits. I knew I had to do some research and find out what needed to be done to lead him to the other side. I went to the library and read up on everything I could. I asked around town and found out his name and that he had died in my room. I then decided to talk to him. I said, "Maynard, you need to go to the other side now. Your work here is done." I cannot remember how much time lapsed, but one night, I heard another thump in the hall, outside my room, but this time, an elderly lady was leading an elderly man from the hall into my closet. I watched them without any fear at all. It was such a peaceful thing to witness. Someone came to lead Maynard home. I'm now 47 and still remember this so well. My father lives in the same house, and I do not feel any presence there now. I will add a PS. When I first moved there, a man's wedding ring fell from the top of a door and rolled across the floor to me. At the time, I was a romantic and said, "I will marry the man who fits this ring." I still have this ring, and since it is so large, no man has ever been able to wear it. Several years ago, sometime in 1984, I was living in a small town outside of Fort Worth, Texas, by the name of Crowley. At the time, I was in my early 20s, and I had a roommate. His name was Mike. Anyway, one night, Mike and I were sitting around, watching TV, and having a couple of beers. As it got late, and we were getting tired, the strangest thing happened. In the bathroom in the hallway, just a few feet away, we heard what sounded like the toilet flushing. Mike looked at me kind of puzzled, and asked me if I heard it too. I kind of laughed, and said no. As I switched the light on, I felt my hair stand up. The water in the toilet was still going around. Since we lived in a trailer house, we both just blew it off as poor construction. We continued to sit and have a few more beers when Mike looked at me and said, "Do you smell that?" I sniffed a little and said it smelled like gas. Since the stove in the kitchen directly behind us was the only gas in the house, I immediately stood and turned to look. What I saw absolutely scared the hell out of me. All 4 burners in the stove were on. I finally got up the nerve to turn them off, and we had no problems that night. But that's not the end of the story. Several days later, Mike called me at work. It was around 11 p.m. He asked me if I could come home right now. I could hear the fear in his voice and asked him what was wrong. He said he was lying on the couch when he heard what sounded like kitchen cabinets being slammed closed, and he was very scared. I went home as quickly as possible and found Mike outside waiting, afraid to go into the house. We quietly went inside and found nothing out of the ordinary. I know that this sounds very strange and would be easy to make up. The few people I've had told this to just don't believe it, but I was there and it did happen. The only problem is that for all these years, I've wondered what happened. Was it something paranormal or just ordinary things that go bump in the night? I guess we'll never know for sure. This is not as complex or as interesting as other stories, but very real nevertheless. I was working as a janitor in a restaurant in the Sacramento, California area in the 1980s. During this time, I bought some books on ghosts and hauntings, to include one book called Poltergeist, which gave detailed accounts of numerous poltergeist cases. It was with this book that I had left laying about the house, and then one of my older brothers noticed. He pulled me aside to warn me that I should be careful with what I was messing around with, because, in his words, messing around like this is like knocking on the gates to hell. In light of the fact that he experienced, ironically, while also working as a janitor, a very disturbing encounter of his own, I took this warning seriously. So one night at work, shortly after my brother's words had gotten the best of me, and I had put the book aside, I was busy cleaning the dining room carpet. The place was closed, and the only ones in the building were 2 other janitors, and myself. Picture a Denny's-like place, with the cook's line adjacent to the dining room, a larger kitchen and back, and an upstairs with a storage room, an office, and employee restrooms. I had completed about 2/3 of the carpet, utilizing a big, rotary-style, industrial buffer. It was 4 a.m., and I'd parked the buffer and the cleaning items with it, in the middle of the non-smoking area, away from any tables. I turned and headed for the cook's line, where one of my coworkers was busy cleaning. We exchanged words, commenting that it was time to take a break and make something to eat. He was looking at me as I approached the sandwich side of the cook's line. Then, about 15 seconds after I'd left the buffer, there came the loudest bangs that I've ever heard, indoors. 3 heavy raps, bang, bang, bang. It sounded exactly like a giant fist had pounded down on one of the dining room tables. It hit the table so hard that I could hear the silverware rattle. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I spun immediately around as the sounds came from where I just left, the buffer in the non-smoking area. I saw nothing and spun around back to around my coworker. "What was that?" I asked. "I don't know," was his answer. I thought that was strange, since he was looking in the exact same direction of the noise. To this day, he maintains that he's seen nothing. I immediately went over to see if the buffer had gone off on its own and banged into one of the tables. To my amazement, the buffer was as I left it. I expected to see one of the tables. These are your heavy, wooden tables, tipped on its side. All the tables in the section were okay. No silverware was disturbed. We immediately searched the building, armed with knives and cooking utensils, for the elusive visitor. No one was to be found. We tried, but could not even come close to duplicating what the two of us agreed was a banging on one of the tables. We could barely get the silverware to rattle. This was way beyond what any person could accomplish and get away with without either of us seeing him. I would say that if we took one of these tables and dropped it from the roof onto the parking lot, it would still not be loud enough. Sorry, I cannot say that I smelled something, saw shadows, or heard voices. I ditched the books after that, all except for the one called Poltergeist. Thanks for reading. I live in Hawaii, and there are many different types of ghosts here. We even have our own tour of the most haunted places on the island, where I live, Oahu. Every year, my family camps down at the beach for the Labor Day weekend. In 1992, my boyfriend and a close friend of my cousin's joined us for the weekend. The place we camped had a lot of ghost stories. The beach and all around it was said to be haunted. It did not help when that year, a person was found murdered only a short distance from where we were camping. My boyfriend and our close friend had to work and were coming down to the campsite one night. My cousin and I were on the beach relaxing, waiting for them to return. When they got back, we made a fire and sat around talking. All of a sudden, we got onto the subject of ghosts, and my boyfriend started to tell us of what him and Robbie saw while they were coming back. Robbie did not want to admit what he saw, and while they were arguing, my cousin, who was sitting behind us, started to freak out. All of us, thinking that something horrible had happened, turned all of our attention to her. She said that she saw a guy floating on the water, and he told her that she should be very afraid. After we had calmed her down, my two cousins and I had to go to the bathroom. Upon returning from the bathroom, we were all talking and did not notice our shadows. I was in the middle of my two cousins. Our shadows had a slight outline because our backs were facing the light. My cousin stopped all of a sudden, and we looked down at our shadows. Next to my cousin stood a shadow of a man. This shadow was lighter than ours and did not have an outline. Nobody was by the bathrooms except for us. I tried not to panic, but both of my cousins ran and left me there for a brief second by myself, and then I started to run. All of us grabbed onto each other, and we did not stop until we met up with the guys and told them what happened. That same ghost haunted us for about a year. Sometimes, still to this day, he will come back on the same night when we first met him. Back in 1985, my family moved to a large house in Whibley, in Washington. I was 17 when we moved into this place, and from day one, it just gave me the creeps. The constant feeling of being watched was unnerving. Within the first 2 weeks of moving in, I had my first real experience. We had finally gotten our furniture and was very thrilled to get my bedroom unpacked. That night, I lay in my bed, very smug in my cozy room. The house was dark, and my two younger brothers little sister, and parents were asleep. I began to feel very cold and nervous. I lay there, wondering why I was feeling so odd. Suddenly, there was this horrible screaming coming from the hallway. I jumped out of my bed, grabbed my baseball bat, and ran out of my room. I ran down the hallway towards my little brother's room, convinced that someone had broken in and was attacking them. I ran into their room to find them sound asleep and safe. I checked my sister's room and my parents. All were sleeping and fine. I went back to bed, thinking I must have imagined it. It happened again 3 more times. Finally, I woke my dad and told him what was happening. He thought I was nuts. Nothing else happened that night. Of course, sometime later that year, I began to hear scratching sounds. The sounds mostly came from outside my bedroom windows. It sounded like someone was taking a rake, running it along the sliding, right under my windows. I had 3 windows in my room. 1 faced the south, and 2 faced the west. My best friend and I would stand in front of my windows, looking down, trying to figure out who or what was causing this sound. We could actually hear it move from one side of the house to the other, but could see nothing. When this sound would happen, I would say it's just Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. Other interesting things would happen, not so scary, but weird all the same. In the wee hours of the morning, say around 2 or 3, you could hear the kitchen cabinets opening and shutting, as if someone was looking for a glass. When you near the kitchen, the sound would stop. I've heard this, along with my best friend, her boyfriend, and my siblings. When I would be standing in the front yard with my friends, you could see the living room curtains open slightly, as if someone was peeking out. This would happen even when none of my other family members were home, so I know it wasn't them spying on me. My friends would point it out to me. Who's watching us? There was a spare bedroom in the finished basement that would cause a strange sensation. You would stand in it and become disoriented. You couldn't figure out what wall was west, south, east, or north. You know how you can stand in, say, your living room and say, this wall is east and behind it is the kitchen. In this room, you couldn't pinpoint any landmarks behind the walls, and you would become dizzy. I had a friend. He was in the army and very macho. Stay in that room one night because he didn't believe me. In the middle of the night he left. He said it freaked him out. To this day, we still talk about it. Items would disappear and reappear somewhere else odd. Music from a music box could be heard in the afternoons. When I came home from school and I was the only one home, the kicker was, we didn't have any music box. You could hear someone walking up and down the stairs, only when I was home alone. Nice, huh? When I would talk to my parents about it, they refused to say anything other than, don't say anything to your brothers or sister. I spoke to my youngest brother 6 months ago. He's now 20, and he informed me that he was aware of the hauntings and had many a scary story of his own. The same with my other brothers and sisters. Although it had been over 11 years since we moved out, we still think about this house, and I wonder if the current owners are having a problem with Freddy. I've lived in this house for 15 years, and nothing out of the ordinary ever happened, till I put a chalkboard in the kitchen for messages from my husband and children. About a day after I hung the board, my favorite aunt passed away. She has Alzheimer's. On the board, the word "Y" began to appear. I began to question my family about the messages. No one knew anything about it. One night, my husband had enough and questioned everyone about the message and became angry that no one knew anything about it. He yelled at the board, "Why? What?" I was thinking dinner that evening, and my youngest daughter was taking a bath, and she yelled for me. I left the kitchen, and the board was empty. When I returned to the kitchen, the chalkboard was covered with the word "Y" again. Suddenly, I felt the presence of a woman. It was my aunt who was with me. I told her that she had died, and it was time she rested after having a hard struggle with her sickness. I erased the board before anyone could see it again and took it down. Nothing ever happened again. I feel my aunt didn't understand what had happened to her and had come to me for answers. Why? That was the magic word for her. To this day, I still don't know why, and I don't think I'll ever know why. All I know is Alzheimer's is a horrible disease, and once you have it, there's no coming back from it. Hey everybody, it's Phantom of Darkness here. Now, this video is pretty special because I added one element to this video that makes it exciting. That's right, one of these stories I've written myself, completely fictional, and it's up to you to guess which story is fictional. I've done this a while ago. It's been a while since I've done this before. Basically, I've gathered some true scary stories on the internet. Obviously, you know, the paranormal variety. So you have to guess which one is the one that I wrote and which ones are the real ones. So go ahead, let me know in the comment section below which one you think is fake and which one is the one, you know, that I written. And I can't really talk right now because I feel really flabbergasted. My energy is drained, guys. I'm not even gonna lie. I feel like collapsing and I feel like I'm gonna sleep like a baby tonight because I feel really, really exhausted. Anyway, can't talk as usual, guys. I'm a flabbergasted mouth bastard. I'm not sure what that means, but that's how you know I'm really tired. So guys, good night, good morning. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you in the next video, right guys? Yes, you will. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye. Love ya.